President Trump says he plans to impose a 50%
new U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminium imports have come into effect. President Donald Trump surprised countries around the world last week.
The steel industry is not just a matter of dignity or prosperity and pride. It's above all a matter of
response to the latest developments in the trade crisis. Yesterday, in the latest salvo in his trade war, President Trump again imposed unjustified tariffs on.
On June 4, 2025, President Trump signed a single document that shook the foundation of North America's industrial heartland. A new 50% tariff on steel and aluminum imports, double the 2018 rate, was announced as a bold move to protect American industry. But it didn't play out that way. Over the years, the US had become deeply dependent on Canadian steel. Over 90% of Canada's steel exports head south. So when Trump's proclamation hit the Federal Register before DC traffic hit the Beltway, the impact was immediate. By sundown, Canada's steel mills froze shipments, rail cars were halted, and Detroit's auto plants began to sputter. Assembly lines stalled, robots stopped, paychecks vanished. $900 per ton. That's the new cost of US steel. Just a week earlier, it was barely $700. This wasn't Wall Street's doing, it came from one pen stroke. In Canada, the response was nothing short of a masterclass in strategic counterplay. Within hours of Washington's announcement of a crushing 50% tariff on steel and aluminum, the ripple effects began to spread across the continent. But while panic took hold in US boardrooms, Canada saw opportunity and seized it. In Hamilton, Ontario, once the steel capital of Canada and a city long haunted by mill closures, blast furnaces roared back to life. What had been a quiet skyline lit up once again, glowing like a wartime forge. The message was clear. The age of Canadian steel was not over, it was being reborn. Prime Minister Mark Carney didn't hold back. He slammed President Trump's tariff as an own goal of historic scale, and didn't stop at rhetoric. He hinted at export quotas on critical minerals, sending a sharp signal that if Washington could weaponize trade, Ottawa could weaponize supply. Meanwhile, south of the border, American automakers went into crisis mode. Ford Motor Company projected a $2.5 billion surge in steel-related costs for the year and was forced to pull its 2025 earnings forecast just weeks before the next quarterly call. Why the panic? Because every F-150 truck assembled in Dearborn devours a full ton of steel. At the new $900 per ton rate, up from $700 just weeks earlier, that's a six-figure bill every 3 minutes on the assembly line. That math doesn't leave room for error or profit. Then came a remarkable scene. On July 21st, a bipartisan coalition of US senators crossed the border into Ottawa. Their mission? To plead for access to Canadian steel. Their reception? Polite, but cold. No steel, no deal. And Canada was only just getting started. Just days earlier, on July 16th, Ottawa had unveiled the $1 billion Clean Steel Modernization Fund, a sweeping national investment to rip out aging, coal-fired furnaces and replace them with electric arc and hydrogen-based systems across Ontario's industrial belt. This wasn't just about resilience, it was about transformation. At the same time, the federal government moved to clamp down on foreign steel. Imports from countries without a free trade agreement were hit with strict quotas, and once those caps are filled, a mere 50% tariff drops like a guillotine. This set the stage for an entirely new dynamic. Canada's steel was now among the cleanest in the world. With over 93% of Ontario's electricity coming from emissions-free sources, thanks to hydro dams and nuclear power, Canada's steel is now 3 to 4 times greener than the global average. That gives it a front-row seat for Europe's upcoming Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM, launching in 2026. Under CBAM, the EU will tax carbon-heavy imports, but clean producers like Canada will breeze past the toll gate. Canadian steel, CBAM ready. US steel, carbon taxed. In Hamilton, the transformation is already underway. ArcelorMittal Dofasco, Canada's largest steelmaker, is building a direct reduced iron, dry, facility to feed its upcoming electric arc furnaces. This single upgrade is expected to cut emissions by 5 million tons annually, and drop production costs once natural gas prices stabilize. The momentum didn't stop in Ontario. Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario came together on July 22, signing a bold new interprovincial deal. Every new pipeline, rail line, and mineral corridor must use Ontario melted steel. US suppliers, effectively banned from bidding. Before this tariff war erupted, Canada exported 6.5 million tons of steel to the US, with over 1 million ton going specifically to energy pipeline projects. Now, that metal stays home or gets rerouted to Europe, bypassing American ports entirely. US oil drillers and midstream contractors, especially in Texas and North Dakota, are already feeling the squeeze. Material costs have jumped 15%, deliveries are bogged down in customs limbo, and many small firms are cannibalizing old stock just to stay operational. Across the Atlantic, another pressure point emerged. On January 1, 2026, the European Union activated CBAM, its carbon gate for imported industrial goods. Steel that doesn't meet strict emission standards gets slapped with a tax pegged to the EU carbon price, projected to average $89 per ton that year. That makes dirty steel more expensive in Europe than ever before. And Canada is ready. With its ultra-clean grid and hydrogen-forward policies, Canadian steel can ship into Rotterdam, Antwerp, or Hamburg with a green tag and zero penalty. Meanwhile, US steel, still 63% coal-fed, arrives with a red flag and a double tax, once from Trump's tariff wall, and once from Europe's climate policy. And the consequences are landing at home. According to the Tax Foundation, this tariff regime will cost the average American household $1,296 this year. That's a full month of groceries, or utilities, gone. Back in Michigan, the state's unemployment rate hit 5.4%, the highest in the country, and well above the national average of 4.1%. The culprit? Steel shortages, idle assembly lines, rusting robots. While Detroit reels, Canada thrives, quietly rebuilding its mills, locking in European contracts, and reshaping its industrial future with clean electrons and green hydrogen. So here's the billion-dollar question. How do you compete with a neighbor who just turned your economic punch into a clean energy moonshot? The bigger picture, Canada's strategy, America's dilemma. This isn't just a trade dispute. It's a climate-era industrial war, and Canada came to the table with a strategy Washington didn't expect. While the US relied on tariffs and legacy infrastructure, Canada rewrote the playbook. Instead of retaliating dollar for dollar, Ottawa invested upstream, in cleaner furnaces, domestic capacity, and future-proof markets. And the results are staggering. By 2026, analysts project Canada could replace up to 50% of its former US export volume with high-margin contracts from Europe, Japan, and Southeast Asia, regions with stringent carbon import rules that now favor low-emission producers. Canada isn't just exporting steel anymore, it's exporting credibility. And the US? It's staring down an uncomfortable truth. You can't build 21st century supply chains on 20th century policy. Political fallout in the US. Back in Washington, the political pressure is boiling over. By late July, hearings began on Capitol Hill as lawmakers grilled White House trade advisors over supply disruptions, job losses, and falling competitiveness. Midwestern states, once considered Trump's industrial strongholds, are now reporting layoffs, missed shipments, and angry suppliers. Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin are seeing ripple effects across sectors, not just auto, but also appliances, construction, and defense. Senator Maria Hastings, D.M., didn't mince words. We built our industrial base on Canadian steel. We didn't expect that base to get cut out from under us in a matter of weeks. And it's not just Democrats. Republican governors in steel-dependent states are quietly calling for tariff exemptions, or at minimum, accelerated clean steel credits to help US mills catch up. But clean steel can't be conjured overnight. It takes years, and billions. What Canada did right. Let's be clear. Canada didn't win this round by chance. It took planning, political will, and a bet on clean power that's paying off faster than anyone expected. Ontario's hydro and nuclear grid gives Canadian mills an emissions advantage that's nearly impossible to replicate without massive infrastructure overhauls. Ottawa's carbon pricing system already aligns with the EU's CBAM rules, giving Canadian exporters seamless access to the world's second-largest economy. And Canada's early hydrogen pilots, like those in Sault Ste. Marie and Hamilton, position it to dominate the next generation of green steel production. What's at stake globally? This isn't just a North American story. It's a global realignment of how and where heavy industry gets built. The EU CBAM is only the beginning. Japan, South Korea, and Australia are exploring similar carbon adjustment measures. Even China, long the target of Western trade restrictions, is developing its own internal carbon markets that could shift sourcing and pricing. In short, green steel is the new oil, and whoever controls the cleanest, cheapest supply will control everything downstream: autos, defense, construction, tech, and even renewables. That's why Canada's playbook is being studied in Berlin, Brussels, and beyond. It's no longer just about making steel. It's about making the future. The road ahead for the US Washington has two choices: adapt fast and invest in clean steel at scale. That means massive funding for electric arc furnace conversion, federal partnerships with utilities to decarbonize the grid, tax credits for carbon-efficient production, or entrench deeper, gambling that protectionism will shield domestic firms long enough to catch up. But if history, and Hamilton's skyline, are any indication, the world won't wait. Final thoughts. This isn't just about tariffs. It's not even just about steel. It's about whether countries can pivot from old models of dominance to new models of resilience. It's about energy, emissions, supply chains, and trust. And right now, Canada is setting the pace. So as American assembly lines flicker and Canadian mills blaze forward, one question remains: will the US rebuild its steel future, or watch it leave, one railcar at a time?